A day of dramatic developments across Europe and the Middle East. In Berlin, an articulated lorry has been deliberately driven into a popular Christmas market. At least 9 people are dead and 50 injured.
It wasn't an accident. There is no way it could have been there just by veering off the road. And it showed no signs of slowing down at all.
A suspect has been arrested. All Berliners have been told to stay indoors. Meanwhile, in Ankara, the Russian ambassador to Turkey has been assassinated while cameras were rolling. This was Andrei Karlov getting off a plane with the Russian president last month. Today, he was giving a speech when he was repeatedly shot. This was the immediate aftermath, and we should warn you, it is in itself shocking. The man, an off-duty Turkish policeman, shouted Allahu Akbar, and this is for Aleppo. The critical question, perhaps, though, how will the Russians, already so much more assertive on the world stage, react? Thousands more civilians managed to get out of Aleppo, including 7-year-old Bana, who so potently gave voice to the suffering. And is this a winter of our discontent? Christmas or not, it looks like a whole week of strikes.
This is ITV News at 10 with Tom Bradby.
Good evening. Nothing prepares you for the carnage inflicted tonight by a huge articulated lorry driven, apparently deliberately, into crowds of people enjoying one of Berlin's colourful Christmas markets. At least 9 people were killed, many more were injured. There have been fears and warnings for weeks, months even, that an attack like this might once again be imminent, but it is no less shocking, of course. At one moment, it was the sort of carefree scene you can find all over Germany, indeed Europe, at this time of year. Many families with children milling about and taking in the pre-Christmas atmosphere. In the next, panic as the truck seemed to be veering at high speed, according to one witness, into the busy cluster of Christmas-themed stalls, leaving death and destruction in its wake. Tonight, in an extraordinary development in its own way, police warned everyone in Berlin, a city of almost 4 million people, to stay at home.
The details are still emerging tonight, but once again it seems that an articulated lorry has been used as a weapon in an act of slaughter. The windscreen smashed, the Christmas tree toppled. Several died here, the number growing during the evening. Dozens more were injured in what police call an attack. Many more simply stunned by what they saw. This is Berlin, a fashionable neighborhood, a festive market, Christmas week. The lorry tore down the Christmas lights above and the crowds below. A British eyewitness described what she saw.
We were about 8 to 10 feet away from where the lorry came through. So the hut where we bought the mulled wine from, behind it there was just a couple of steps up, and we were sat on a bench. And it was right in front of us. It was so close. It was ridiculously close that if we had have gotten up 2 minutes earlier, we would have been in the thick of it. But it was just crashing through people, crashing through the huts. It pulled the lights down so it all went dark, and we just didn't know what to do. The first thing I did was call my mum, just say, I'm in Berlin, I'm safe.
These look like the tactics of the Nice attacker. Mohamed Boulwel drove a 19-ton truck along the seafront, killing 86 people. And tonight in Germany, investigators are trying to work out whether this too was an act of terrorism. The truck crashed into the crowded Christmas market in the center of the city, just outside Berlin's Kaiser Wilhelm Memorial Church. Moments ago, the State Interior Minister said, as to the motive behind this attack, we don't know. There is one suspect who's been arrested, but we don't know anything about the motive behind the incident. Right now, a suspect, believed to be the lorry driver, is being questioned. His answers will guide this investigation.
And Rohit joins me now. Rohit, you mentioned Nice, the attack in Nice, of course, which was, feels like years ago, but was in fact only in the summer, and I don't think anyone will have forgotten. Are we sure this is a similar, terror attack? No doubt about it tonight.
There is doubt about it. What determines whether something is a terrorist attack? Well, it's nothing to do with the means that are used. It's all about the method. Was there a political or perhaps a religious motivation behind this? And that, of course, hasn't been established yet. It may well be established in the coming hours as that questioning begins at a high-security police facility in Berlin. And so we don't know. There are claims of responsibility being reported from so-called Islamic State tonight. I'm not sure those claims are true, just to be absolutely clear, even though the US media seem to be reporting them. But what is so pertinent about the circumstances of this incident is the relevance of Christmas markets, which have featured so profoundly in the jihadist sphere over the past few months. Just a few days ago, a 12-year-old boy, it was revealed, in Germany, had been planning to attack using 2 nail bomb rucksacks at a Christmas market in the south of Germany. Now, significantly, it was discovered that he was in direct contact with so-called Islamic State. He wasn't a so-called lone wolf. He was being guided by the group in Syria or Iraq. And so that really features heavily here. And of course, in France, earlier this month, an attack was foiled, believed to be against a Christmas market at the Champs-Élysées. And so the relevance of Christmas markets here, featuring so heavily in the narrative of IS, does lead people to assume that the terrorism is what's behind this, but we can't be sure.
OK, but it's a deeply unnerving thought concept for everyone at this time of year. Obviously, people are, going out and about, wanting to do their shopping and all the rest of it. In Brussels, I remember when there was the attack there, the authorities did totally lock down the city. But Berlin is a very big city. The idea of it being in total lockdown tonight is kind of extraordinary in its own right. I mean, I'm guessing that means the German authorities are worried that they haven't got a handle on this.
Yeah. The German intelligence agencies are actually incredibly open compared to our own, and they have made it consistently clear their nervousness about the possibility of a terrorist attack inside Germany. There have been much smaller attacks at the music festival earlier in the year, on a train travelling near to Munich earlier in the year as well. But this is precisely the sort of attack they feared. And I think in this extraordinary response that we see tonight, we get an indication of the very high levels of nervousness in Germany that I think are reflected really across so many European countries.
OK, Rohit, thank you very much indeed. Now, it's one of those moments, the true impact of which may not be clear for some time yet, but brutal and deeply shocking it certainly was. The Russian ambassador to Turkey was opening an exhibition of photographs in the capital Ankara today when he was gunned down. A man later identified as an off-duty police officer shouted, "Don't forget Aleppo and God is great," as he shot him 8 times in the back. You should perhaps prepare yourself because the shooting was caught on camera. There was immediate condemnation in Turkey and Russia and indeed around the world. Here, the Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson called it despicable.
Moments before he was fatally wounded, Ambassador Andrei Karlov was at a podium talking about photography. The plainclothes policeman lurking behind was his killer. Moscow's man in Turkey was shot several times in the back. The assassin shouted, "Don't forget Aleppo. Those who inflict cruelty will pay." These pictures show him roaming the building in the minutes after the attack. Soon he himself would be shot dead by fellow police officers. As for the ambassador, he was rushed to hospital but soon pronounced dead. As well as being acutely embarrassing for the Turks, this assassination is an obvious threat to Russian-Turkish relations, which have only been improving slowly following the downing of that Russian warplane by the Turks a year ago. Also, the assassination is further evidence of just how internationally corrosive the Syrian conflict has become and just how far its tentacles can reach. After talking to Vladimir Putin, Turkey's President Erdogan appeared, saying both of them had agreed to more cooperation and solidarity in the fight against terrorism. The assassin was a 22-year-old officer in the local riot police. The authorities claim he had links to those behind the attempt to topple Mr. Erdogan in a coup in July. Russia's backing of President Assad has led to protests in Turkey, just one of many challenges the leadership is facing as a direct result of the Syrian conflict. Now Mr. Erdogan is in damage limitation mode, keen to avoid another rift with the Russians after this embarrassing security failure. John Irvine, News at 10, Istanbul.
Well, the first response of the leaders of Russia and Turkey was to say the attack was aimed at destabilising ties between the two countries. President Putin said the attacker wanted to derail what he called the Syrian peace process. But the fact remains Russia and Turkey back opposing sides in the Syrian civil war, in which Turkey has aligned itself with moderate opponents of the Assad regime.
It has been a year. Few people will forget in a hurry, and it's not over yet.
I apologise to my honourable friend because I was just looking at what I believe, Mr. Speaker, is some breaking news that the Russian ambassador to Turkey has been shot.
As the Prime Minister told the House of this latest development, the Foreign Secretary hurried away to deal with its implications. But the real question as the news broke in Russia itself was what the reaction of the Russian president was likely to be. In the circumstances, by his standards, he was quite restrained. It was a provocation, he said, aimed at spoiling the relationship between Turkey and Russia and derailing what he termed the Syrian peace process. There's an awful lot we don't know about what happened today, who the killer really was and what precisely brought him to this point, but a few things we do know. Earlier this year, the Russians dramatically upped their involvement in Syria, helping turn the tide of the civil war in President Assad's favour. And in recent days, Assad's army has taken control of Aleppo, amidst allegations it was murdering civilians in the street. Brutality seems to beget brutality. And that is certainly how American military commanders on the ground see it.
There's a danger, there's tremendous damage being done to society. Children are being exposed to this kind of thinking. They're being exposed to atrocities. They're being made to participate in them. It's just a devastating situation. It's going to take a lot of attention from the international community and the international coalition to undo the damage that's being done now.
This has been the year Russia took bigger, bolder steps on the world stage. We saw one tragic consequence of that on the streets of Ankara today. Exactly what impact it will have on the rest of us is, as yet, hard to determine.
And speaking of Aleppo, 4,500 more people were brought out of the rebel enclave in eastern Aleppo today in a steady trickle of buses moving in convoy through what remains of their city. 50 orphans, many of them traumatised and dehydrated, some of them badly wounded, were among them. As the buses began to move, the United Nations hammered out an agreement to send observers into Aleppo. France says the monitors are needed to prevent what it calls mass atrocities by Syrian forces or their allied militias.
After all the false dawns and failed ceasefires, the complete evacuation of civilians from eastern Aleppo is now in sight. All day, families have been leaving their battered homes, taking with them only what they can carry, the final price of escaping the bombs and shells. The largest movement of people came just after dawn. A convoy of buses taking 3,500 civilians out of the besieged suburbs into rebel-controlled countryside, where they're safe for now. They included a minibus packed with 50 children from an orphanage some of them injured, most dehydrated, all of them traumatised. It comes too late to affect these latest refugees, but Russia has now agreed to a resolution that will put UN monitors onto future evacuation buses to prevent reprisals.
We have seen people pulled off buses, their valuables stolen, and of course many reports of men and people in the fighting age range being either detained, forced to the front lines, or just never heard from again.
Syria's man at the UN said it was just another Western ploy.
While we respect the Security Council resolutions, we are aware of the real purpose of their efforts, which is to protect the terrorists.
Among those safely out of Aleppo now is 7-year-old Bana Alabed, whose tweets and videos from inside the siege were followed by millions worldwide. Bana hopes she can return one day. So does this man. But before leaving, he kissed Aleppo's soil because he knows he probably won't see it again. Paul Davis, News at 10.
Now, as Paul was saying there, one of those who made it to safety was little Bana Alabed, the 7-year-old girl who helped tell the world about the suffering in Aleppo. The tweets and videos featuring the words and observations of Bana became, for many, the voice of Aleppo and a symbol of its plight.
Morning from Aleppo, we are still alive.
Among the thousands trapped in the besieged eastern Aleppo, the voice of one 7-year-old girl was heard by the world. Bana Alabed's account of life on the front line of the Syrian war gathered 338,000 followers on Twitter. Now evacuated to safety with her mother, she described the horrors of war she witnessed as they left Aleppo.
بكل مكان شفنا قصف وشفنا الطيارات كمان شلون عم تطلع.
In September, Bana's tweets to the outside world began. Good afternoon from Aleppo. I'm reading to forget the war. But by October, weary of the bombardment, she wrote, "Stop the bombing now. I want to sleep. I'm tired. And I'm very afraid I will die tonight. This bombs will kill me now." In November, there was a glimpse of the destruction she was witnessing daily, tweeting, "My friends, this is not a cloud, this is our houses." And just 5 days ago, her mother's words of desperation, "Dear world, there's intense bombing right now. Why are you silent? Why? Fear is killing me and my kids." Fatima, who set up and ran the account, always denied it was propaganda. She says they just wanted to tell the world of the suffering.
Me and Bana want to tell all the world how much kids and all people in East Aleppo, how much they are suffering from bombs and everything, because there is no life there.
Bana will no longer have to listen to the sound of bombing. Her final tweet tonight, just 5 words. "I escaped from East Aleppo." Martha Fairley, News at 10.
Well, back here, the prospect of a Christmas of discontent caused by strikes and industrial action prompted strong words from Downing Street today. Strikes have already hit the railways, while post office employees also walked out. Then there's the dispiriting prospect of strikes by airline and airport staff wrecking Christmas travel plans. Number 10 didn't comment on whether it thought the strikes were politically motivated, but it did accuse the unions of showing a shared contempt for ordinary people.
On parts of the rail network, the post office network and many airports, it may be Christmas, but it's really not that festive. The union representing post office workers clearly still has a sense of humour, but the message delivered to government this morning was serious. Their dispute is about jobs and pensions, and they claim these sacks are full of messages of support from the public.
Workers everywhere in the UK are under huge pressure at the moment. In fact, I can't remember a time when workers in the UK as a whole are under more pressure to work harder, faster, cheaper, for less.
Much of the post office network does remain open, and the company insists it's business as usual.
In terms of the operational impact on customer service, it's been very, very slight today. So less than 35 branches are closed, so there's been almost no impact on customers at all.
This week, on top of the post office walkouts, a strike by guards at Southern Rail that began today continues tomorrow. Baggage handlers from Swissport at 18 airports walk out on Friday and Christmas Eve. Some pilots at Virgin Atlantic will work to rule from Friday. And a minority of British Airways cabin crew take industrial action on Christmas Day and Boxing Day. The strikes are legal, but some MPs have called for even tighter restrictions on strike action.
I completely accept and understand people's right to strike if they're being treated unfairly or oppressed, but that right must be balanced with the right of ordinary people to get to work and to see their loved ones, particularly at a time like Christmas.
It's Archie's first Christmas. He's booked to fly to France with BA from Heathrow on Boxing Day. Now, the airline insists all flights will go ahead, strike or no strike, but Mum and Dad are worried.
While I have a huge amount of sympathy with people trying to better their working conditions, it seems really unfair that they can hold the Christmases of thousands of families to ransom.
Tonight, British Airways and Unite were talking things through until late at ACAS. Talks between Swissport and Unite begin tomorrow. The prospect of a cluster of strikes colliding with the holiday has inevitably grabbed the headlines, but so far this year, fewer than 300,000 days have been lost to industrial action. Go back to Britain in the 1960s, 70s and 80s, and disruption was routinely measured in millions of days lost. The fact is, nowadays, bitter disputes between companies and their staff are comparatively rare. It is the season of goodwill and the worst may not happen. But with inflation rising in 2017, more companies will be under pressure to increase pay. The potential for conflict is clear. Joel Hills, News at 10.
Northern Ireland's First Minister has survived a no-confidence vote in the Stormont Assembly. Every Assembly member, apart from Arlene Foster's own Democratic Unionist, walked out of the chamber in protest as she delivered a speech about her involvement in a botched heating scheme that could cost taxpayers £400 million. An independent investigation is underway into her part in the scheme, which she described as her deepest political regret. The government tonight admitted what News at 10 discovered when we reported from Yemen in October. Cluster bombs supplied by Britain were used by Saudi-led coalition forces in their war in Yemen. It must be said straight away that they were exported from the UK in the 1980s, and these munitions were not banned until 2010. But confirmation came today from the Defence Secretary, Michael Fallon, that a limited number of the bombs had indeed been dropped.
A partly exploded British cluster bomb lies in a Yemeni storage facility. This deadly and indiscriminate weapon was filmed by News at 10 near the Saudi border in October. Today, for the first time, the UK and Saudi governments confirmed these British cluster weapons have been used during Yemen's current war.
The coalition confirmed earlier today that a limited number of BL 755 cluster munitions exported from the United Kingdom in the 1980s were dropped in Yemen, including in the incident alleged by Amnesty International, not far from the Saudi border, by a coalition aircraft.
Today's admission is in stark contrast to what the Saudi-led coalition spokesman told News at 10 last month.
If you are talking about UK cluster bomb, this is obsolete, we did not use it, and we already destruct the storage that we have.
The UK has issued military export licences worth £6.7 billion to Saudi Arabia since 2010. In the 1980s, Britain sold cluster bombs to other nations, but signed a legally binding international treaty to ban the manufacture and sale of the weapons in 2010. All 108 nations who signed the agreement made a commitment to halt sales and prevent other nations using them.
The UK government can't ignore this. We've seen hospitals attacked, we've seen schools attacked, we've seen public buildings attacked, even funerals attacked. Now it's time the UK government took its head out of the sand, suspended arms sales to Saudi Arabia and the Saudi-led coalition immediately.
20 months of war have taken their toll on Yemen. 14 million people are now at risk from starvation. A major fundraising appeal by 13 of the UK's leading charities is now underway. Today's disclosure over the use of British cluster weapons once again puts the spotlight on the UK's role in Yemen's tragedy. Neil Connery, News at 10.
A court in France has found the head of the International Monetary Fund, Christine Lagarde, guilty of financial negligence, but it didn't hand down any punishment. The case concerned an award she approved for a businessman while she was French finance minister in 2008. The award, worth £340 million, was over the disputed sale of a firm. Ms. Lagarde was not in court for today's verdict. She'd left France for Washington. The French government says it still has confidence in her. Back here again, the Justice Secretary Liz Truss revealed today that nearly 400 inmates have had to be transferred out of the prison in Birmingham badly damaged in Friday's riot. And in a statement to MPs in the Commons, she warned that the problems in British jails, which helped give rise to those scenes of extreme violence, could last for months. The government is working, she said, to ensure British prisons are stable while reforms are delivered.
Inside the van, more inmates being moved out of Birmingham prison to other jails, and clearly not happy about it. Friday's riot, filmed on smuggled phones, has left 2 wings too badly damaged to be used. Outside the prison today, Nasir Khan, whose brother is behind bars. He told us he'd managed to call another inmate who had a mobile phone in their cell. We listened in as the prisoner complained about conditions and described the atmosphere as still tense.
Tension's really bad in here. They're not helping you. Nothing. They're doing one by one lock and letting you out one by one to get your food. Not it could. It will kick off again. It will. Yeah, any time the tension's here. Yesterday they unlocked viewing for medication and they kicked off, so they shut everyone up again.
Order. Statement. The Lord Chancellor and Secretary of State for Justice, Secretary Liz Truss.
Well, Mr. Speaker, since I was appointed as Secretary of State for Justice in July, I have been absolutely clear that we do need to improve safety in our prisons and that the levels of violence we currently have is unacceptable. And we are investing a further £500 million over the next 3 years, which was announced in the autumn statement.
The Ministry of Justice says it's making the most far-reaching reforms of prisons in a generation, spending £1.3 billion on new jails and recruiting 2,500 new officers. Not enough for those who'd seen the damage inside Birmingham prison.
Always welcome more money being put into prisons, but in order to get those 2,500 prison officers into the system, they're going to have to recruit 8,000, because the quicker they're recruiting them, they're losing them at the other end. 30 staff alone in the last week here have resigned from HMP Birmingham, which has made matters even worse here because they've got a staffing crisis.
Underfunded, overcrowded and violent. The consistent complaints and a real sense of crisis inside Britain's prisons. Angus Walker, News at 10, Birmingham.
Football's world governing body is facing criticism from politicians and veterans tonight after slapping fines on the home nation teams for breaking its rules over Poppy Day. The English FA was fined £35,000 for players wearing Poppy Day armbands at their Wembley game in November against Scotland, who were themselves fined £15,000. Wales and Northern Ireland also received fines for similar offences. FIFA bans the wearing of all political symbols at international games. And that is pretty well all we have time for today, a day which seemed to encapsulate, one might say, the difficult, even disturbing times we are living through. Tonight's attack on a Christmas market in Berlin was a kind of nightmare for our times. A family occasion in the festive season turned into a scene of fear and carnage, and one of Europe's major capital cities in complete lockdown in the run-up to Christmas. And all that only a few hours after an event which could yet have profound consequences for the world at large. The brutal assassination in public, indeed as the cameras rolled, of Russia's ambassador to Turkey. "Remember Aleppo," shouted his killer. Both events arguably provide a grimly portentous end to a year which, for lots of difficult, dangerous and often downright bad reasons, will be hard to forget. I'm sorry not to end on a lighter note, but perhaps 2017 will bring better cheer. In the meantime, good night, and thank you very much indeed for watching.